evil has existed since the dawn of time. Today we explore some of the twisted stories of real people who made deals with the devil, or at least believed that they did. In 2001, Manuela and Daniel Ruda, a couple, committed a very horrific crime. They were responsible for the death of their very own friend, Frank Hackert. They believed Hackert was so amusing that he would make the perfect court jester for Satan. The Rudas were deeply involved in occult practices and would apparently sleep in graveyards and go to devil-worshipping ceremonies. And you know what? Nothing wrong with liking spooky stuff, just as long as it doesn't go too far, and in this case, it definitely did. Their fascination with the occult ended in a series of violent rituals that they subjected their friend to, ultimately leading to his death. After killing him, they placed his body in a coffin that they were using as a coffee table. They even attempted to dismember his remains, but were then caught before they could fully dispose of the evidence. In 2002, both Manuela and Daniel were convicted of the crime. Daniel was sentenced to prison, while Manuela was committed to a psychiatric institution. Richard Ramirez, known as the Nightstalker, one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. Unlike most serial killers, Ramirez's crimes were very random. There's just no clear pattern to his method other than brutality for the sake of brutality. He'd attack men, women, old, young. He's responsible for a ton of home invasions, violent attacks, SA, and of course, killings. He also viewed himself as a servant of Satan, leaving symbols of the occult at his crime scenes like pentagrams. During his trial, he famously flashed a pentagram tattoo on his palm, claiming his allegiance to the devil. He believed that he was carrying out the will of Satan, claiming that his acts were a form of worship. He often used the phrase "Satan is great" to justify his actions. Gilles de Rais was born in 1405 in France. He's known for a lot of things. He was a wealthy nobleman, a knight, a leader in the French army during the 100 Years' War, a good friend of Joan of Arc, and one of the most prolific serial killers in history. Around 1432, Gilles de Rais began withdrawing from society, pursuing some of his darker hobbies in secret, and it was at this time that, coincidentally, boys around his castle began to go missing. And when witnesses started noticing bodies being buried by Gilles de Rais' staff members, it became pretty clear that something very dark was going on, but no one was prepared for how truly disturbing things would turn out to be. Well, it turned out Gilles de Rais had a slight obsession with the occult, especially alchemy. In medieval Europe, alchemy was often viewed as a form of black magic. Gilles ended up employing an alchemist from Tuscany named Francois Prelati, who claimed to have a special connection to a demonic entity he called the Baron. Prelati promised that he could summon this spirit to help Gilles with his magical practices. He began providing Prelati with body parts from his young victims, gruesome offerings that would apparently help conjure this demonic entity. It didn't work, and Gilles de Rais was executed for his crimes on October 26th of 1440. He'd taken the lives of 140 boys, possibly and probably far more than that. In 2015, in the small town of Dudley, England, a 65-year-old pensioner named Peter Churn was attacked by a young man named Tommy Smith, who later claimed that he'd been possessed by a demon. In reality, though, Smith just wanted the old man's Range Rover. Peter Churn was in his garage when this possessed Smith wildly attacked him with a blade. The attack was so vicious that his weapon actually snapped in two. Miraculously, Churn survived the attack but suffered a stroke as a result and was blinded in one eye, along with having several slash and stab wounds to his head, chest, neck, back, and ears. Churn later said in court that Tommy Smith had been waving the blade around like a kung fu sword. The old man managed to fight Smith off though. He started pressing on the guy's eyes but blacked out after that from his injuries, obviously. Luckily his son came out of the house though, at which point the devil-possessed blade wielder took off running. The court obviously didn't believe his whole possession story, but instead of prison, Tommy was sentenced to a mental health hospital for the foreseeable future. If I wished I could pay a visit to your city every night, at will I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. That's just one line from a letter published in the paper on March 13th, 1919, written by a man calling himself the Axeman, one of the first modern-day serial killers. The Axeman claimed to be a demon who resided in hell, and his letter acted as a warning to the people of New Orleans that he would kill again if people didn't blare jazz music from their homes on the night of March 19th. Well, the 19th came around, and sure enough, jazz was heard in every home and dance hall throughout the night, and no one was killed. The identity of this mysterious Axeman was never found, but he took the lives of 6 people, leaving 6 others injured, between May of 1918 and October of 1919. Many of his victims were Italian immigrants. He'd quietly sneak into people's homes in the dead of night, bludgeoning them with his axe. Then, as suddenly as the killings began, they just stopped. If there's one type of place you'd expect to find the Grim Reaper lurking, it is a hospital. In this video taken in October of 2022, a paramedic is filming outside of a hospital as a patient is being brought in. Now, unfortunately, this patient died just a couple hours after this video was taken, but nothing about the video itself seems out of the ordinary. The paramedic didn't think so either until he went back and watched the footage later. Take a look at this. A shadowy figure can be seen standing in the hallway that the patient was just rolled out of. Knowing that the patient died right after this, it's hard not to imagine this could be some sort of dark entity, an omen of death. A lot of late night security guards claim to have some pretty eerie experiences, but in hospitals, it must just be a whole other story. Not a job you'd want to do if you're a believer in the paranormal. In this video, a security guard at a hospital in Argentina was alone at the front desk late at night. We watch as the automatic doors open, only there's no one there. The guard obviously notices the doors open. He gets up to check it out. Now, watching the video, your first thought is, why does he get up and walk over? Clearly there's nobody there. It gets even weirder when he starts talking to thin air. Well, according to the guard, he wasn't talking to thin air. He even allows this invisible presence into the hospital. Now, after the incident, the guard claimed he saw a woman who told him she'd left something in her room, so he took her name down and let her in. But he was chilled to the bone when the staff showed him this footage, especially when they told him that the name he'd written down was a woman who had passed away just the day before, in the exact room she said she'd been staying in. Up next, we have the ghost nurse. Now, based on the dialogue behind the camera, it looks like these two were patients and were running around one night in the dark after having spotted some sort of entity. They're clearly in a panic right from the get-go, and right at the start of the video, we see what looks like a nurse peering out of the window. The pair decide to continue creeping around in the dark in search of the ghostly nurse, remarking on how the place seems to be empty. And then, this happens. Alright, gotta admit, it's hard not to laugh at this dude's scream. Now, for as loud as this man's scream is though, he's brave enough to give a war cry and then run to the hallway to try and catch a glimpse of whatever this thing is again, but when he turns the corner, all we see is a dark, abandoned hospital hallway. A brave man indeed, a loud man, but a brave man. Not sure how good he'd be to have around on your ghost hunting team. He'd probably go deaf by the end of the night, and he'd probably scare all the ghosts off, but at least he'd be willing to run up on a ghost like he were about to skewer it with a musket. Wherever this place is, by the way, it's creepy. No doubt there's a ghost or two lurking somewhere in those hallways. Zozo is a name that's become infamous in the world of paranormal activity, especially when it comes to Ouija boards. The legend of Zozo's been around for a long time, but in terms of modern internet popularity, it all started in 2009, when a man named Darren Evans wrote about his supposed experience with a demon on an internet forum for true ghost stories. He said that he'd been using a Ouija board and asked if there was any spirits or entities in the room. The planchette went nuts, going back and forth between the letters Z and O. Then it told him it was going to take his family to paradise, and when he asked what the entity meant, it spelled out hell. A whole bunch of commenters then responded, saying they'd also had run-ins with Zozo during their Ouija board sessions. People will often say Zozo might appear playful at first, before quickly turning sinister. Once Zozo has established contact, the experiences often escalate to disturbing messages, threats, or aggressive behavior. Reports from those who have dealt with Zozo include sudden mood swings and even full-on physical attacks. What's particularly unsettling is that Zozo seems to show up across different locations, meaning it's not just some local urban legend, people from all over the world have claimed to encounter Zozo. The Black Monk of Pontefract. In the late 60s and early 70s, the Pritchard family, who lived in a house at 30 East Drive on the Checkfield estate in Pontefract, England, began experiencing strange things in their home. The troubles began almost as soon as they moved in. Family, friends were visiting one day when the wife felt an icy breeze. The husband saw white powder falling from the air. But things only got stranger from there. The kitchen floor would often have unexplained puddles of water on it. They even called in a plumber who couldn't seem to explain what was going on. One night, Jean Pritchard and her son were so scared they left the house altogether to stay with a neighbor. They'd witnessed a heavy chest of drawers swaying on its own. But then everything just stopped. For about 2 years. The Pritchards were understandably relieved. Little did they know the activity would resume, and more violently than before. After this sudden lull in activity, the haunting came back, with loud crashes and objects moving on their own. Diane Pritchard, the Pritchard's daughter, claimed she was thrown out of her bed and dragged up the stairs by an invisible force, leaving lacerations on her neck. They even tried to use holy water to cleanse the house. Instead of peace, though, the family reported that the poltergeist, or whatever this thing was, responded by painting upside-down crosses on the walls and doors and destroyed crucifixes in the home. Joe and Jean Pritchard even claimed to see a black cloaked figure with a cowl appearing over their bed, hence the entity being dubbed the Black Monk of Pontefract. On a cold February night in 1855, something bizarre was reported in Devon, England. The so-called Devil's Footprints were a series of unexplained tracks that appeared overnight in the snow. The tracks were reported looking a lot like cloven hooves, and they went on for about 100 miles, crossing over frozen rivers, rooftops, and even walls. Locals were petrified. How were these tracks not only visible on the ground, but also crossing over obstacles like walls and fences without leaving a trace of how they might have gotten over them? When news hit the paper, people were completely flabbergasted. One section read, "It appears on Thursday last night there was a very heavy snowfall in the neighborhood of Exeter in the south of Devon. On the following morning, the inhabitants of the above towns were surprised at discovering the footmarks of some strange and mysterious animal endowed with the power of ubiquity, as the footprints were to be seen in all kinds of unaccountable places, on the tops of houses and narrow walls, in gardens and courtyards, enclosed by high walls and palings, as well in open fields. The superstitious go as far as to believe that they are the marks of Satan himself." So what happened here? Well, one theory is that it was all just a hoax, but how could someone have made the cloven footprints without making any prints of their own? And even if they did manage to find a way, they'd have had to go through quite the effort. To this day, no conclusive evidence was ever found to explain these footprints. The Kumakatok, or door knockers, are told of in Philippine folklore. They're said to appear in the dead of night. They're described as robed figures with their faces obscured by hoods. The trio usually consists of a young woman, a middle-aged man, and an elderly man. It's said that their presence is often associated with death and misfortune. The legend goes that regardless of whether someone even answers the door, the mere visit from the Kumakatok signals impending doom. Typically, the omen is said to affect someone in the household, especially if that person is elderly or already in poor health. There's a belief that the Kumakatok's visit is a sign that death is on its way. As you can imagine, stories of the ominous hooded entities became more widespread during times of big disease outbreaks. In an attempt to ward off the trio, people started painting white crosses on their doors, and this seemed to make them shift their focus from private homes to public buildings like hospitals, government offices, and churches. It's said that the sightings of the Kumakatok have died down since World War II, but the legend continues to be a part of local folklore. In York County, Pennsylvania, a mom of 4 named Amanda Pitt caught something really weird on her security camera. It rattled her so badly, her family started thinking about moving. So at 3:40 a.m. on October 21st of 2023, Amanda had been sleeping when she suddenly woke up to the sound of heavy footsteps inside the house. Naturally, she checked her security camera feed, expecting to see her husband or maybe one of the kids moving around, but no, what she saw was something else entirely. "I made sure Jeffrey was still in bed because I thought it could be him," she said. "I checked on the camera and stared at it for a little bit because I thought I saw somebody." On the feed, there was this blurry, ghostly figure just standing in the doorway of her kitchen, not walking, not moving, it was just there. Totally freaked out, she shook Jeffrey awake and told him to go check it out. He crept downstairs, and there was nothing. No open doors, no broken windows, there was no sign of a break-in. But their dog, Ollie, was acting sorta weird, pacing the kitchen, clearly shaken up by something. Amanda couldn't shake the feeling. She stayed up the rest of the night, glued to the TV, trying to calm herself down, but that image was burned into her brain. "I couldn't go back to sleep. I laid there and turned on the TV because I was scared," Amanda continued. "I kept going back to the camera, but I couldn't see it anymore, so I thought maybe I was seeing things. The next morning, I didn't even know what to make of it." She kept a screenshot of the ghostly figure just to prove that she wasn't going crazy, but even with the photo, she still kept checking the camera again and again, trying to convince herself that she'd just imagined it. Thing is, this wasn't the only time something strange had happened in the home. "Things have happened here before," Amanda said. "The people who lived here before didn't live here for very long, but we never found out why." Amanda and her family moved in back in 2020, and weird stuff started happening almost immediately. She'd get camera alerts on her phone when no one was home. Doors would open on their own. The kitchen sink turned itself on one time. "I've never been a ghost believer, but we've had things happen that make us question it," she admitted. "That picture is terrifying. Thinking there's something like that in your house, you question everything." Well, if the dead ever did start rising from their graves and we had a real-life zombie situation on our hands, I imagine it would look something like this. This is some doorbell camera footage of a man trying to break into a house. I don't think this guy lives here. Now, obviously he's on something, right? Or a concoction of substances, but my God, does look like a zombie. The raggedy clothing, the scrapes and bruises all over his body, how lanky he is. It looks like he was just bitten by a walker from The Walking Dead. He's so out of his mind that he starts violently throwing himself into the door, and he hits it so hard that he eventually just falls backward, having nearly knocked himself out cold. I do not want to think about what this guy would have done if he'd made it inside the home. See if you spot anything creepy about this next clip. Here's some context for this one. So this is surveillance footage from a manga cafe inside a multi-tenant building in Japan. The camera is set up right at the reception counter, capturing footage of the elevator near the entrance. Now, notice as the elevator doors open and the man exits the doors. He's not alone in that small elevator. Right behind him, you can spot this tall woman in a red dress. At first, it doesn't look all that unusual, but take a closer look. Doesn't she look almost freakishly tall? She'd have to bend down to clear the elevator doors. But maybe she wasn't standing there. To some, it looks more like she's floating in the air. Not to mention that she's completely motionless. The more you look at this clip, the more unsettling it gets. It almost looks like footage you'd see from The Ring. Especially because, according to people in the neighborhood, the woman in the clip, as grainy and low quality as it is to be fair, looked a lot like a woman who'd taken her life in a nearby park not long before this footage was taken. And, of course, we need to talk about the infamous Elisa Lamb case, one of the most unsettling pieces of security footage online. Back in 2013, Elisa, a Canadian student, was staying at the Zozo Hotel in downtown LA. She went missing, and no one could figure out what happened to her. Then the LAPD dropped that elevator footage, the one we've all seen. It's only a couple minutes long, but man, it gave everyone the creeps. In the video, Elisa steps into the elevator and starts pushing a bunch of buttons, like all of them, but the elevator doors won't close. Then she starts peeking her head out like she's hiding from someone. She moves her hands in this strange, slow motion sort of way as she steps in and out of the elevator, almost like she's playing a game. She also looks like at one point she's talking to someone, but no one else ever appears in the footage. This was all authorities had to work off of. she was nowhere to be found. A couple weeks later though, hotel guests started complaining that their water tasted funny. Sometimes it would come out muddy and dark. Maintenance checks the rooftop water tanks and, well, there's Elisa's body. But this just opened up a whole Pandora's box. Most of it centered around two very big questions though. Why was she there, and how did she get in there? The doors were supposedly locked and alarmed, and the tank was not easy to access, especially in the state she was in. The official cause of death was accidental drowning, with her bipolar disorder listed as a contributing factor here. Still, that elevator footage has fueled theories for years. Everything from ghostly possession to some sort of cover-up. Maybe someone was there off camera she was hiding from. Well, there are still a lot of unanswered questions about this case to this very day, which is why we still talk about it. If I were a patient at this hospital, I'd be asking to leave. That is some exorcist behavior, and I'm just not here for it. Doctors and staff apparently reported the woman hadn't been under the influence of any substances. Was she just messed around? Was she in a certain mental state? It's hard to say. There's not a lot of info on this one, but clearly something is going on. A haunted chair, always creepy, especially in a hospital. Reddit user Stalker the Zone posted this video writing, "This was about a year ago. I do security at a hospital. The chair was on the other side of the hallway on my first patrol, and on my second patrol, this is what I had found. This is really the only time I've ever experienced anything spooky like this. Never really was a believer until this happened." End of post. What you're seeing here is footage of the Waverly Hills Sanatorium, said to be one of the most haunted former hospitals in the world. The most notoriously haunted spot, the Waverly Hills Body Chute, aka the Death Tunnel. Waverly Hills Sanatorium is a former tuberculosis hospital in Louisville, Kentucky. A tunnel was used to transport patients who were dying from tuberculosis without being seen by others. They would be taken out of the hospital through this long, dark passage, which stretched about 500 feet long. The idea was to keep the grim reality of death from affecting the morale of the other patients and staff. Because of this, many people believe that the tunnel still houses the spirits of those who were transported there. I mean, if anything's going to be haunted, it's an old abandoned tunnel that countless dead bodies were rolled through, right? Visitors have reported feeling this strange energy in the tunnel. Some have claimed to hear voices, footsteps, and even cries echoing through the darkness. The tunnel has become a popular spot for ghost tours. It was featured in an episode of Ghost Hunters, and yeah, definitely a place I'd like to check out. What is this person doing? Standing there and filming. Turn around and walk back down the hallway, sir, or ma'am, whoever you are. First thing this reminded me of is that hospital scene from Jacob's Ladder. If you know the movie, you know what scene I'm talking about, and it's not something you ever need to see in real life. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what the person needs. I don't know if this person needs help. All I know is I'd be getting someone else to do it. Not that I should be handling anyone's medical problems, seeing as I'm not a doctor. Anyway, so many questions about this video. Why is this person on a gurney at the end of a dark hallway alone? Why are they moving like that? Where is this? If anyone has any more info on this clip, let us know down in the comments. This creepy photo is taken by a nurse using a surveillance camera. In the image, you can see a dark, crouched figure standing on a patient's bed. It's hard to make out what the thing is, but many have said it kind of resembles your classic cloven foot demon creature. The nurse noticed the shadowy figure moving up and down the patient's body, and just a few hours after the figure was spotted, the patient sadly passed away. This kind of sighting is not totally unique. There have been claims of demon-like figures appearing in hospitals before. Some people believe that hospitals are places where these dark entities lurk, waiting for someone to die so they can drag their souls away. One night, a few nurses decided to explore a floor of their hospital that is supposedly haunted. Patients and staff would report all sorts of strange things going on there, so some nurses figured, what the heck, it's a quiet night, why don't we go up and peek around, and this is what happened. It happens pretty fast, but the curtain does start to move on its own. The nurse was just understandably too freaked out to stand there and keep filming. Then a pen flies off the desk, seemingly on its own, with no accompanying gust of wind or anything like that. And after that, they book it back down the hallway in a panic. This video was getting shared a lot online when it came out, and it's easy to see why. It's not even so much about the supposed paranormal stuff. It's their reactions. They seem pretty genuine. Like always though. What do you all think? Sean Sellers had a very troubled upbringing. His mother was very young when she had him, and his father wasn't really in the picture. His grandfather and uncle also put him through severe mistreatment. On several occasions, Sellers' uncle would force him to wear soiled diapers on his head just to humiliate him. By the time he was in 10th grade, he and his family had moved 30 times. Sellers began taking a keen interest in the occult and claimed to have been possessed by a demon on March 5th, 1986, when he snuck into his mother and stepfather's room with a firearm and killed them both. According to him, he'd also carried out an occult-like ritual before deciding to take their lives. The year before this, he'd killed a Circle K convenience store clerk, Robert Paul Bauer, because he'd refused to sell him beer. In 1986, he was sentenced to death for his crimes, making him the youngest criminal ever sentenced to death in America since 1976, a record he still holds to this day. His death sentence wasn't carried out until 1999. In his 13 years in jail, he'd become a born-again Christian, and just 2 days before his death, Sellers wrote in his diary that he was amazed at the, quote, self-righteousness he still encountered from people who didn't know him. Going on to write, "People, for one moment, get your eyes off my sins and look at your own. You want to harp on something that happened 13 years ago. 13 years. In February of 2016, Jason Dalton, who was working as an Uber driver in Kalamazoo, Michigan, went on a shocking spree that left 6 people dead and 2 others injured. What makes this case particularly unsettling is the way Dalton tried to explain his actions during police interrogations. On the night of his spree, Dalton picked up and dropped off passengers, and in between doing this, randomly started shooting at people on the street. He killed 62-year-old Mary Lou Nye, her sister-in-law Joe, 74-year-old Dorothy Brown, 68-year-old Barbara Hawthorne, and father and son Richard and Tyler Smith. When police questioned him, Dalton claimed that the Uber app had somehow taken over his mind and body, stating, "I know you guys are gonna have a hard time believing this, but it literally took over my mind and body." He then described seeing symbols, including the Eastern Star and a horned devil head that would appear on his phone. Dalton received life in prison for his crimes. On September 10th of 2015, a body was discovered in an abandoned car in the Whitestone area of Queens, New York. The victim was 28-year-old Angie Escobar. The medical examiner determined that Angie had been killed about 4 days before her body was found. The New York Police Department quickly identified Luis Zambrano as the prime suspect. He was arrested on September 18th after fleeing to Virginia, but he didn't take long to confess to the crime. Zambrano admitted that he had attacked Angie with a pair of scissors after she told him she wanted to break up. Zambrano also claimed that he'd been possessed by a demon at the time of the attack. In April 2016, he was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 20 years in prison. On top of that, he was also convicted of an unrelated burglary charge, which added another 3 years to his sentence. I wonder if Satan told him to do that as well. Peter Kürten, often referred to as the Vampire of Dusseldorf, one of the most notorious serial killers in German history, active from February to November of 1929 in the city of Dusseldorf. He had a fascination with people's red bodily fluids and would often drink the BLOOD of his victims, hence his nickname. He carried out several brutal killings and other very disturbing crimes I can't really get into detail on. When he was finally apprehended though, Kürten confessed to his crimes in detail, describing how he felt exhilarated during his crimes. Ultimately, he was convicted and sentenced to beheading in 1931. Between 1976 and 1977, David Berkowitz, aka the Son of Sam, terrorized New York City with a series of shootings that left 6 people dead and several others injured. One of the strangest parts about the Son of Sam case, though, was Berkowitz's bizarre claim that a demonic dog was instructing him to commit his crimes. He believed this dog, belonging to a neighbor, was possessed and sent by the devil to give him orders. Berkowitz's letters to the police and the media were filled with all these cryptic messages and references to his supposed connection with the supernatural. He also said he was in a satanic cult. During his arrest, he infamously stated that he was just following orders from this demonic entity in the dog. And the Son of Sam became a name that would haunt headlines for years. After his capture, Berkowitz was diagnosed with various mental health issues, but he continued to insist that he was acting under the influence of some sort of evil force. In 1978, He pled guilty to his crimes and was given 6 consecutive 25 years to life sentences, one for each of his crimes. He's still alive and in prison to this day. So this is security footage of a car plowing into a police station. Luckily, it wasn't a robot from the future looking to terminate anyone in the building though, just a dude in a blouse with no pants ranting and raving that he was possessed by the devil, throwing rubber snakes all around the place. Guess what state this happened in? It's Florida. So in June of 2024, a 40-year-old man named Joseph Leedy made headlines in Martin County, Florida when he drove his Toyota sedan straight into the lobby of the Martin County Jail. The cops found Leedy wearing only a woman's blouse with no pants. He'd poured motor oil on the floor and threatened to set the place on fire. Leedy also threw rubber snakes onto the floor and made disturbing statements, including that the, quote, devil told me to kill everyone. Deputies, of course, tried to subdue Leedy as he resisted arrest. Even after being tased and given multiple doses of medicine to try and calm him down, he still wasn't cooperating. Leedy was eventually restrained though and taken to a hospital where he just kept yelling and screaming. Fortunately, no one was injured during the incident as the lobby was empty at the time. This next eerie clip comes out of Mexico. A teacher was captured on a security camera one night marking some papers when he started to act strangely. See, according to him, the mother of a student came to the classroom door and they had started having a conversation, but everyone was confused because the only person on camera was him. The teacher said that this parent came to the door and asked him for a student, who of course wasn't there. The school day had ended. He then said he watched as the mom walked to an adjacent room, at which point he got up to speak to her more, but when he got to that room, he found it was completely empty. And there was no sign of the woman anywhere in the hallway either. Suddenly, it dawned on him that something was just off about this whole situation, at which point he decided to grab his stuff get the hell out of there. Now this may be one of the most famous instances of a possible possession captured on security footage. The woman in the clip is named Debbie Berman. She was on a ghost hunt, part of a team investigating one of the most haunted houses in Britain, a place called The Cage in St. Osyth, Essex. It used to be a prison for women accused of witchcraft back in the Elizabethan era. 8 of these supposed witches are said to have died there. Well, the ghost hunting crew decided that they were going to stay overnight, and at around 3 a.m., while they were in the master bedroom, said to be the most active room in the house, something strange happened. Debbie started acting weird. Well, more like her face started acting weird, morphing into this twisted, ghoulish grin, her eyes turning pitch black, and it was all caught on one of the security cameras they'd placed in the room. Lead investigator Brad Mack was pretty shaken up, saying she looked totally unrecognizable. And things got even freakier when Debbie said that her back was burning. She lifted her jacket and there were 4 deep scratches down her back. Nobody was near her, nobody touched her, at least no one the team was able to see. There's this wild piece of footage out of Brazil that started making the rounds back in 2017. It was recorded at Miguel Couto Municipal Hospital in Rio de Janeiro, and honestly, it's one of the creepiest things ever caught on camera inside a hospital. So this guy shows up with a bullet wound to the face, and instead of lying down and waiting for help like a normal injured person, he starts wandering the halls. But it's not just stumbling around, he's walking like he's being taken over by something. His back is all rounded back, his arms and legs are jerking in these weird, unnatural ways, and he's screaming, but it doesn't sound exactly like screams of pain. Instead, it almost sounds like he's exhilarated, being controlled by someone or something else. Security guards managed to capture some of the altercation on camera. There was no official word from the hospital about what actually happened. They never released a diagnosis, never explained it medically. Any level-headed person would, of course, assume he was on something, but without context, you'd probably think this was behind-the-scenes footage of a zombie movie or something. Alright, so this video comes from a TikToker named Anelli_RG. Her actual name is Mariana. She took the footage at her church in Mexico. According to her, she always felt a strange unsettling vibe whenever she was there. Nothing specific she could point to, just a general sense that something wasn't right. So one day she decided to record during Mass to see if she could capture anything unusual on camera, and she did. When she reviewed the footage, she noticed someone or something that she doesn't remember seeing in person at all. It stands out immediately. In her description, she said it wasn't a human, and honestly, it's hard to disagree. The figure looks pale with dark, almost hollow eyes, almost like some lifeless mask. It's not just a case of bad camera quality either. Everyone else in the shot looks completely normal. So what's going on with this ghoulish looking figure? What would you do if you were working overnight security and saw this person show up on your surveillance camera? I say person, but I mean, look at her, it looks more like a zombie to me. So, at a school in Mexico, this security guard was on an overnight shift when he looked at the surveillance camera by the entrance of the building and saw this unsettling looking person staring up at the camera trying to get inside. The glowing eyes, the unusually long looking arms, this is not what I would want to see trying to break into my workplace in the middle of the night. Again, I'd think a zombie invasion was breaking out. This image was posted to Reddit by Dystopia321, who wrote, "This is a camera set up in the woods, set up to take photos when it senses movement. Main purpose is to take photos of deer and other wildlife. There were no people that could be in the woods at the time, and it had to have been moving to set off the camera. What is this?" Well, I can't say exactly what it is, but I can say it doesn't look good. A rake, a skinwalker, wendigo, golem. All possible identities mentioned in the comments, and I don't know, those seem like good guesses to me. What a horrifying looking creature. Could it be some extra tall, thin, pale person skulking through the forest alone in the middle of the night? Sure. But that's not really a comforting thought either, is it? What do you all think of this one? This one legitimately gave me chills, because it took me a few seconds staring at the image before I saw it, but when I did, yeah, just no thank you. Reddit user OrangeFood87 shared the picture saying that back in 2012, their roommate received the image from her boyfriend. He was working at a body shop after hours and snapped a photo of this totaled car that had just been brought into the shop. He was alone at the time and didn't see the eerie figure until he looked back at the photo. Apparently, he closed up early that night, and I can't say I blame him. This picture was taken at the South Pittsburgh Hospital by Reddit user JustOkayAtLife, who wrote, "Taken in the second-story shadow hall where they report a 7-foot-tall shadow figure. This was taken at the end of the night. There was one other guy with me, and he was in front of me to the left. He had the flashlight, so there's no way this shadow was either of ours. If you have a chance and you happen to be in Tennessee, I highly recommend visiting this place. Earlier in the night, I was walking down a dark hallway alone on the first floor, and from the left side of me, there was a doorway where I heard a hissing sound shoot out of one of the rooms, moving towards me. It was an incredible experience. Incredible experience, that's one way of putting it. Our final clip today comes from Saudi Arabia. YouTuber Adventures Jassim79 was doing what he does best, exploring a creepy abandoned place. This time he was walking through an old rundown house, and when he got to the roof, he caught something incredibly chilling on camera. As he passes by a clothesline, through a small opening between sheets, this ghoulish face with pure black eyes appears. Just as fast as it shows up though, it thankfully vanishes. Yeah, I'd be praying too if I saw that face poking out at me. Seeing as this is in Saudi Arabia, many viewers have commented that this could be more than just a ghost, but a jinn. Spirit-like beings from Muslim tradition that can be invisible, shapeshift, and sometimes exhibit a more classical kind of demonic behavior, tormenting people or in some cases, even possessing them. Genuine or not though, it's a pretty creepy video.
The first story for today comes from Reddit user Troy Bolton, I guess, who in 2018, along with a friend, used a Ouija board to hold a seance in their bedroom. To their surprise, it worked, and they made contact with someone named James. The only problem was, James was a liar. He claimed to have died in the house, but that was impossible, since the house had no previous owners. The friends decided to end the seance and go about their day, but soon after, Troy Bolton, which is the Reddit user's name, get used to it, started feeling cold spots in their room and feeling incredibly uneasy whenever they passed the closet in their hallway. In 2021, things started to get a whole lot worse. The Reddit user caught their first glimpse of whatever the hell James was. The demon appeared in the home and looked kind of like a woman, but the problem was that instead of a mouth, it was just black, but somehow the creature was still smiling from ear to ear. In 2013, the Reddit user told a friend about what they had been experiencing, and the two decided to cleanse the Ouija board with some sage. But when they went to light the lighter, it broke. Eventually they were able to sage the board, and after they did, they looked up to see a young man staring at them from across the street. The two went to see where his parents were, but all of a sudden he ran into an abandoned building. The young man, along with the creepy apparition of the woman, were not seen since the cleansing, but recently, like as recently as 7 days ago, Troy Bolton posted that they'd been waking up in the middle of the night around 3 or 4 a.m. to see something moving around their bed. There have been no updates since. Next up, we've got the Popa Bawa, a demon that resembles a large bat-like creature with big wings and one eye. It is also said that this particular demon is quite well endowed down there. You guys know what I mean. The demon is said to stalk men and women alike, using its shape-shifting abilities to get close to its victims. It hunts at night, sneaking into homes to violate entire families at a time. It's basically summoned through word of mouth. Once it attacks, the demon demands its story to be shared. Whoever hears of the demon is at risk, but those who do not share their experience become targeted by the demon. He breaks into their home again and again and again, and that is definitely not something you'd want. So of course people are forced to share their story. It is said that Popa Bawa first appeared in 1965, and it has been seen as recently as 2007. Researchers have tried to track down the demon's origins, but it's unclear exactly where it comes from. Protection rituals can be performed to keep the demon from entering the home, including salting doorways and holy water, so if you're feeling nervous, it might be time to make a quick pit stop at your local church or corner store, whichever you guys decide. This next story comes from another Reddit user, this time Natural Selection T, who 2 years ago summoned the demon Amon using an unknown mantra. He didn't tell us, that's probably best because I don't want you guys going out and trying these. Anyways, after about an hour of reciting the mantra, he gave up. He didn't think anything was gonna happen, but he eventually heard a distinct growl coming from behind him, and in the hours following he experienced sensations of being watched and felt pinching in his left foot, like that kind of pinched nerve sensation. He also claims to have heard movement coming from inside his kitchen. That night when the user went to bed, he had many incredibly vivid and terrible nightmares, many of which closely resembled various depictions of hell. The following day things began moving on their own, and Natural Selection T decided to try and communicate with the demon, but apparently that only made things worse. He experienced sharp pains down his spine, sleep paralysis, strange visions, violent dreams, and the user believes that while attempting to banish Amon, he accidentally summoned more demons into his life. He never updated beyond this point, so no one knows what happened to him. If you guys have any theories, let me know.
In November of 2006, Amy Stamatis, a nurse working at Baptist Health Medical Center in Little Rock, Arkansas, suddenly, strangely, just lost her ability to do her job, which led her to quit. Now, along with this, her physical abilities sharply declined. She couldn't run anymore, for example, a passion she'd had her entire life. And as her mental health continued to deteriorate, she started displaying erratic behavior. She started having public outbursts and would yell at family and friends, seemingly out of nowhere. Then she was seen climbing a 7-story parking ramp, planning to jump, but the police managed to convince her to come down. Later that year though, Amy did succeed in jumping from her 2nd-story window, which left her paralyzed from the waist down. While she was recovering in the hospital, she was visited by a woman named Cindy Lawson, a Pentecostal evangelist, who made her a very odd offer, an offer she just couldn't refuse. Cindy claimed that she had experience in performing exorcisms. She also believed that Amy was possessed by demons and felt compelled to help her. Lawson claimed to have seen pretty wild things in her previous exorcisms, like people's eye color changing, They'd foam at the mouth, speak in strange demonic voices, but Amy agreed to let Lawson perform an exorcism on her anyway, as scary as it sounded. Amy claimed she didn't remember the exorcism itself, but her family said there was a significant change in her behavior afterward. Unfortunately, she was still paralyzed, but said her outlook had totally changed for the better. The Gottlieben-Dietz case is a supposed case of a real-life demonic possession. It's pretty well documented, but surprisingly not talked about very often, despite some of the crazy stuff that was said to have gone on. A woman named Gottlieben-Dietz was reportedly possessed by multiple demons. Dietz was born in the early 1800s and lived in the town of Mottlingen. In 1842, she began exhibiting some strange and violent behavior, which she, her family, and virtually the entire neighborhood interpreted as signs of demonic possession. Reports say she would have these violent outbursts, speak in languages she didn't know, and show extreme physical strength. Her condition worsened over time until the family turned to the church for help. A pastor named Johann Christoph Blumhardt began carrying out a series of exorcisms to rid her of the demons she claimed had taken hold of her. Supposedly, during these exorcisms, Dietz would exhibit supernatural abilities. She'd levitate and, most gruesomely, vomit things up, like bits of glass and nails. And after a long series of exorcisms, Gottlieben finally claimed to be free in 1843. Spring-heeled Jack is one of the most bizarre cases in all of Britain. The legend dates back to the 19th century, the earliest reports appearing in the 1830s. About 50 years before Jack the Ripper was terrorizing the streets, there was a possibly inhuman entity known as Spring-heeled Jack, a mysterious menace who could leap great distances and heights. He was said to wear a dark cloak and a hat, sometimes with devilish horns. Some accounts even describe him having glowing red eyes. It said he would leap out of the shadows to attack unsuspecting victims. He was seen in various locations, especially around London, and his attacks often involved him scratching at his victims before leaping back into the shadows. No one was ever caught or identified as Spring-heeled Jack, but stories became widespread. He was talked about in newspapers across the country. At one point, there were cases being reported as far as Scotland. So was this a case of a sadistic criminal dressing up as a demonic bat, running off into the night to cause mayhem? Were there copycats? Was this just a case of mass hysteria? Or was there really a demon stalking the streets for that brief moment in time? Every facility with a public bathroom on Earth needs to pay very close attention to this next point. Akaname is a Japanese demon who might just be the creepiest bathroom helper you'll ever hear of. It's a toilet-dwelling, goblin-like creature with slimy hair and these long, nasty toenails. Its tongue is also long and covered in gross, poisonous saliva. Probably the last thing you'd ever want to see when sitting down to do your business. Luckily though, Akaname isn't as dangerous as he looks. The entity is known as the Liquor of Filth, not a nickname anyone would probably want to have, but he cleans up messes in bathrooms. He's attracted to grime and scum, and his main job is to lick up all that nasty stuff. Clearly, he doesn't show up in some of the public bathrooms in these parts. Why can't we have a toilet cleaning yokai in this country? I would actually kind of welcome having a golem creature crawling around in the bathrooms if it meant avoiding some of the just downright horrendous things I've seen in public bathrooms over the years. People are just animals. I gotta imagine that this was created as a scare tactic to get youngsters to keep the bathroom clean, and you know what, hey, if it works, some folks could have used some more scaring when they were young, I think. In the quiet town of Hannibal, Missouri is the Mark Twain Cave, and people come from all over the world to see it because it's a cave he's referenced in his work. According to a tale though, there's a demon that's said to dwell in the shadows of the cave. The legend mainly stems from this vast pit with a seemingly endless drop. It's the pit that famously inspired the dramatic death scene of Injun Joe in Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. The seemingly endless pit does make for the perfect place for a hellish entity to crawl out of. I could see where the stories come from. Finally though, we have the Mahaha from Inuit folklore. This thing is absolutely twisted. It's almost like the Joker if he was closer to a wild animal and somehow even more sadistic and cruel. A Mahaha is a demonic spirit with a permanent ghastly grin plastered on its face. They're tall, they're thin, they're creatures with terrifyingly wide mouths and long, sharp fingers, which will come into play later. The Mahaha hunts down its victims in the dead of winter, and once it finds someone, it doesn't finish them off quickly. That just wouldn't be fun enough. It plays with them first, using its icy fingers to tickle them until the victim is cut to ribbons by their sharp claws, or they just die from sheer exhaustion, fright, and exposure. So if you ever find yourself out in the freezing Arctic and hear the sound of someone or something chuckling in the distance, you might want to run.
And hear what happened in Texas when a man in a devil mask showed up on a family's doorstep. These are terrifying real devil sightings caught on camera. Did someone capture a shadow person on camera lurking over their bed? This video comes from Carrie E on YouTube, who noticed something terrifying on her home smart camera. Clearly, there's this dark black shape standing in the corner of the room. And you know, at first I didn't really think much of this. I mean, it's not hard to put on some dark clothes and lurk in a corner, but then it moves, and that's when you notice just how unnatural this thing really is. It zips across the room so fast, and in such a smooth, unnatural motion. This is clearly not a person. On top of that, watch how blurry it becomes. It doesn't look like a solid mass anymore. If you've ever had sleep paralysis and felt like something was standing over you or sitting on your chest and restricting your breathing, well, this video probably ain't gonna help you sleep any better, so sorry about that. Did you ever have an imaginary friend growing up? Do you have pleasant memories of said imaginary friend? Well, this next story may make you look back on your childhood a little differently. This photo here was shared online years ago. It looks pretty innocuous, two kids playing, but the thing is, there was only one youngster present at the time. At least that's what the parents thought. They were watching their son playing in the living room, saying he was talking with his imaginary friend Pauline. Dad snapped a picture, and when they looked back at it, they nearly screamed. Something else was clearly in the room, at least the camera picked something up. And the closer you look at this mysterious figure, the creepier it becomes. The eyes, the smile. Not only does it look unnatural, it has this air of aggression about it. Pretty creepy photo. So this happened back in January in Texas, just outside of Dallas. Two homeowners were left terrified after someone showed up at their house wearing a red satanic mask and holding a cardboard sign that said Revelation 21:15. If you know that Bible passage, it's all about the apocalypse, judgment day, that kind of thing. So the devil mask is bad enough, but it's really not the message you want showing up right on your front porch. The whole thing was caught on their doorbell camera. It happened around 8 p.m. on a Saturday. You could see the person dressed in all black standing there a few feet from the door, completely still. They ring the doorbell, wait a few seconds, then knock, and when no one answers, they just walk around the side of the house and stand there in the driveway, still holding the sign. The homeowners were not home at the time. They'd gone out to dinner, but they saw the footage later and they freaked out. "I'm scared," the homeowner told CBS. "I'm scared to leave the house. I'm scared to be at the house." She also said, "It's about the end times. It's about Judgment Day. I freaked out." Police looked into it and said the masked person hadn't been seen at any other homes in the area and technically didn't commit a crime. Still, they said they'd keep an eye on the neighborhood just in case. And a little message to viewers here. Probably not the best idea to knock on some random person's door wearing a devil mask in Texas. Yeah, I don't know about that. Anyway, just what kind of animal are we looking at here? According to the uploader, it wasn't an animal. At least, not one he'd ever seen. Reddit user Corrine James posted the image along with a description reading, "EMT friend saw this 2 nights ago, turning his ambulance around at the end of a rural road. It was swaying and its eyes were glowing without the headlights. This was in central Kentucky." Now, interesting thing about Kentucky, it's the home of the Pope Lick monster, aka Goatman. So, a terrifying part man, part goat hybrid with glowing red eyes. I don't know, am I drawing the wrong connections here? Am I crying? I don't know. But what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments.
Next up we have the devil, because obviously if I'm gonna do a list about evil demons, I'm gonna include the OG. In Christianity, it is believed that the devil was the result of a fallen angel by the name of Lucifer. He was prideful, and because of his sin, he was banished to rule over hell. While the name Lucifer is quite common, the devil has been known to go by many names, each one corresponding with its own sin. We have Satan, which corresponds with wrath, Belphegor, sloth, Beelzebub, gluttony, Leviathan, envy, Asmodeus, lust, and Mammon, which corresponds with greed. While some people believe that these demons are separate entities, others believe that they are simply separate ways in which the devil shows up, hoping to entice the saints of the world to commit sin. In the most extreme cases, the devil has been known to influence ritualistic sacrifice, careless killings, and obscene violence, but I'm sure you guys knew that. Alright, moving on from the devil, we have none other than the devil's wife, Lilith, also known as the mother of demons. Now, according to Jewish lore, Lilith was the first wife of Adam, actually, which would also make her the first woman, not Eve. There are many versions of Lilith, but the most popular tells that she refused to submit to Adam, and so she was banished from the Garden of Eden. She took revenge by stealing Adam's seed and using it to birth the first demon to walk the earth. Lilith later fell in love and married Lucifer Morningstar, the fallen angel, aka the devil, and Lilith is known today as the mother of all demons, a symbol of female empowerment, a symbol of rebellion, and a succubus, which is like a promiscuous kind of demon. I feel like summoning Lilith would be like calling one of those centers that like pick up and say, where can I direct your call? Because, you know, being the mother of all demons, I feel like she would have the authority on directing summonings? I don't know. However it works. Anyways, Lilith herself can be summoned using rituals and chants, but be careful because she is said to bring complete chaos wherever she goes. That one seems kind of obvious. Next up, we have Twaru no Hanako-san, which translates directly to Hanako of the toilet. This demon has been described as both a young woman with bobbed hair and a red skirt, and a large three-headed lizard who uses the voice of a young woman to attract its prey. The demon is that of Japanese folklore, and it is found within the bathroom stalls of learning centers in Japan. To summon this demon, all a person has to do is knock 3 times on a stall door and ask her if she's in there. If the stall door opens, it means that you have successfully summoned Hanako-san. It is believed that the demon came to haunt the bathrooms of learning centers after being killed by an adult who had found her hiding in the bathroom during class time. While some believe that she's harmless, others have said that she's been known to drag young people into the stall and drown them in toilet water if they are not able to present her with a perfect score on an exam. I guess that's one way to get kids to study. It seems a bit harsh though, if you ask me. Okay, this next demon isn't so much summoned as it is created, I guess. It's called Bakong, and it is known throughout Indonesia and Malaysia. The Bakong is based in Islamic tradition, which believes that when someone dies, they should be tied down with a burial sheet in 3 places: the head, behind the neck, and the feet, so that the deceased soul remains anchored during its remaining time on Earth. After 46 days, the ties are undone so that the soul may ascend. When the ties are not undone, however, is when things get kind of dark. The deceased soul becomes trapped on Earth, and it becomes a vengeful demon with pale, shriveled, eyeless faces and a floating, like, decaying body. It's super gross. It is said to attack anyone who crosses its path. Like, these guys are just angry and they're out for BLOOD. You guys know I can't say it. They're often seen jumping in front of cars in an attempt to cause accidents, probably hoping to get someone to hang out with, if I'm being honest. The life of a Bakong does sound pretty lonely. Not to mention their feet are bound, so they have to hop or roll around the grounds of cemeteries. The only way to avoid one of these things is to either run down a long, winding road and pray it doesn't catch up to you, or lie down and play dead until it loses interest. 2 not so great options, if you ask me. I just wouldn't hang around cemeteries in these places. Next up, we have the Jinn demon, an ancient demon that can be found in Arabic and Islamic folklore. They are said to be malicious, mischievous, and downright diabolical, coming in second to the devil in terms of causing major chaos and mass despair. They are said to just kind of exist. Born of smokeless flame, they take on the forms of humans, animals, and kind of anything else in between. And they roam the earth undetected until they are insulted, that is. When a person unknowingly insults a jinn, which could be as simple as trying to kill a bug, which is a jinn in disguise, or calling a person or animal ugly, that's also a jinn in disguise. The jinn loves revenge, and it doesn't dole it out lightly. When a jinn feels insulted, it will release a plague and disease on whoever it feels deserves it, and sometimes it will even possess its offenders, leading them to die in some kind of freak accident. The only way to banish a jinn is to actively pray for its demise, and I guess to pray that those prayers are answered before it gets doubly offended that you're praying for its downfall. Again, it seems like a lose-lose situation. Next up, we have Z-A-Z-A, also known as Z-O-Z-O. I pronounced it both ways for my Canadians and my Americans in the audience, but I'm not going to take the chance of actually saying this thing's name because many people believe that you can actually summon it just by saying it. So instead, I'm gonna call it Z. Z is a negative and parasitic demon entity whose sole purpose is to create chaos so that it may feed off of the fear of whoever has summoned it. Another common way to summon it, other than saying its name, is through the use of Ouija boards. Reddit user AnyoneButMe78 tells of them and their friends trying one out at the age of 12. They encountered Z but quickly got freaked out and ran out of the house without saying goodbye. Not that smart if you ask me. They went to a party, and when they returned to the room with the Ouija board, it was a mess, and it appeared as though the number 666 was loosely spelled out on the floor in the clutter. They say that no one was home during the time that they were gone. The user left no updates as to what life was like in the years that followed, but I'm really hoping they were eventually able to close out the encounter because this Z demon sounds pretty freaky and super dangerous. And finally, we have a story that comes from Reddit user Alu Patar, but we're just gonna call them Patar. So at the age of 12, Patar developed some kind of obsession with rag dolls and even decided to make one. But here's the thing, while sewing up the doll, Patar accidentally pricked their finger and ended up getting their BLOOD inside the doll. That sounds not so great. Eventually, Patar began feeling the presence of something in their room. They would often hear sounds of heavy breathing and feel as though they were being watched by something standing over their bed. As the years went by, these experiences kept happening. Patar often spent his nights frozen in fear, and then one day, things got a bit more real. Patar noticed things being moved around their room and even heard a whisper. Adam was the whisper, and he believed that this was the name of the demon who had been haunting him. One night, Patar found the doll in his bedroom drawer, and 2 days later, his mother died. He eventually moved out of the home, but the hauntings didn't stop there. At the age of 15, Patar saw a dark face with dark red eyes peering out from underneath his bed. He was terrified, and eventually this fear forced him into such a state of loneliness that he began talking to the spirit, which he described as oddly comforting. I'm not really sure what came out of this in the end. Patar posted his experience to Reddit like 8 years ago, and since then, no one has heard from him. I have literal goosebumps, you guys. It's so freaky